let's talk about this. Yeah. Now that the book is finished, we are going to discuss it. Just like I think everybody else, originally saw the original It, and I really liked it, was scared of it as a teenager. If you've seen it, you know there's the part where the clown comes out of the drain. Totally terrified me for probably months that he was gonna come out of the drain. He never did. But then, the remakes came, and I loved the part 1 and part 2 because in the original It movie, I just feel like they were trying to shove a lot into one movie, and I liked how in the remake, you get to have part 1 that is more the children and what they're doing and their friendship, and then going into part 2 you kind of see them as adults, and I kind of like that they broke it up that way because you can kind of get more into the storyline than I think the original could, because they were just trying to speed it up so then they could, get the whole movie done. And I have, over the last probably decade really gotten into reading. And I just love, books that are movies or books that turn into movies, because you can get so much detail from a book that you would not get from the movie, because obviously in movies they can only put so much in there. And a couple of years ago, Ken bought me this book for my birthday, and I was like so excited I was going to read it, and then I put it on my bookshelf, and it's been sitting there and sitting there. And going into this year, I said, this is a year I am going to read this book, and I have enjoyed every single chapter, every single page, all the little details. If you have not seen the movies, I encourage you to go see the movies. But if you've not read the book and you love the movies, read this book. It is absolutely amazing. I'm telling you, the little details, the things that you learn about each character, just the things that they didn't put in the movie that you're like, wow, I kind of wish they would have tried to do that, but in a different way. There are some things that I'm like, okay, I understand you were not going to put that in the movie, but man, I just absolutely loved it. Again, I loved how it deep dives into each character and their lives, and I am just so happy that I finally decided to read this book. But if you haven't read the book, stop watching today's video, because I am going to do spoilers today. I am talking about it all. I'm going from the beginning to the end. So let's talk about it. Of course, the book starts with Georgie and his boat, and kind of like the movie, it was kind of the same. He's running after his boat and he loses it in this storm drain. The clown comes out, talks to him, rips his arm off. In the movie, though, I realized that they did not have his body. They could not find it, and they thought maybe his body got swept away in a storm. But in the book, his body is actually found by somebody who comes out and sees him, and they actually do have a funeral for him in the book. So I thought that was kind of a neat detail that, you don't get if you just see the movies, is that you kind of think like his body is just out there somewhere. But I liked in the book that they kind of made it as like a closure, more or less, for like Bill and his family, to not like be like, okay, well, where is he? At least you know that his arm got ripped off, he did lose a lot of blood, and they just couldn't save his life. And then like the next chapter I kind of like is because they go to like the festival with the Adrian and Don couple, the gay couple in the movie that you actually see. I don't know if it's in part 1. I think it's in part 2. They actually do put that in the remake, and reading kind of like that story was kind of neat, just like getting some background on that. And again, I do like that in the newer movie they put that in. Again, with the older movie, I think they were just trying to put as much information in to make a movie, and that's why I like the remakes better, because you could put more stuff in that you normally wouldn't have been able to. So that's kind of the start of the clown coming back, and he's feeding on people again, and of course that leads to Mike finally calling the loser club and saying, hey, it's back. We made this promise. It's time to come home. And I kind of like that over the next few chapters, you get a behind the scenes of every single kid's life as an adult. The thing that, still stayed the same as Stan does end up killing himself because he, doesn't want to go back and he is scared to face it again. And there's a couple things here and there that are different from the movies that I understand they kind of just did what they had to do. The one thing like Beth fighting with her husband, that was still in there. Bill is, still a writer. Richie is telling jokes. Eddie is driving a limo. And it's just like those little details though in the book that I really like, of just like the deep dive of like how they're living, what their life's been like, how their jobs are, and the feelings that came about once they got the phone call. And I kind of just, again, loved those little details because you don't get those details in movies, but reading this, it just lets you get a deeper look into what their lives are like. And you also have chapters where you find out what Mike's been up to in Derry this whole time, how his life has been, how he has been, keeping a notebook and a timeline and researching all the times the monster has come and gone. And I think that's really cool, is that they kind of like show you that over the years that he's been there, he's just been researching and trying to figure out like what it is, like what is this monster, where did it come from, how long has it been here. And that's really, really interesting, just the stories that he's had from old people and his father, and it's just a really cool like little detail in the book. And then you kind of go into each kid's childhood too, and what that was like before kind of meeting each other. Of course, there were characters like Bill, Eddie, Richie, and Stan who were already kind of friends, but weren't as close friends as they are by the end of the book. But I kind of like that they go into it, like into each individual kid and kind of tell you what's going on with them, and then tell you what happens kind of after they get together and become friends. So of course they start with Ben, and Ben loves Beverly. It has chapters about him like looking at her in school and just falling in love with her. And of course you get the love note that he writes to her in the library. It's so cute, it's so sweet. Afterwards he runs into Henry, and Henry cuts up his stomach and he falls down the hill. That's definitely something they kept in the movie. And then he runs into Bill and Eddie, and he kind of begins this friendship with them. He's not sure if they want to be friends with him, but they invite him to come back and play with him, and you're like, okay, now this friendship has started with them, and you're like, great. And I also like how they tell you the first time they encountered the clown. Like for Ben, he's walking home during winter, and he goes across a bridge and he looks out on the ice, and there is the clown standing on the ice with the balloons. And something that he just felt really uneasy about is that the balloons were not, moving in the wind, and the balloons were actually going the opposite direction of the wind. And the closer that the clown got to him, he got scared and he ran. And of course the clown did not catch him. But that's kind of cool that you kind of see this first interaction of what it looked like for him to see the clown. Of course, in the movies, he sees the clown in the library, but I kind of liked, the different story for that. Of course, you kind of change it up to put it in the movies, but I kind of like that it was different in the book compared to the movie, and kind of just the feelings around it. So then you kind of go into Bill's story next, how him and his wife's marriage have been, what he's been up to since writing, and then, his books becoming into movies. And that Bill and Eddie become friends with Ben, and Ben after that, shortly after that, meets Richie and Stan, and they start building the dam together. And, I kind of like the friendship that starts to bond over them trusting Ben in building this dam in the river, and just them really having fun and being kids. And then you kind of go into, you know, Bill's home life since Georgie's been gone, and how his parents kind of are treating him, or, you know, really not paying attention to him. And I thought that was a really cool detail too, to just kind of know like what life has been like for him and his family since Georgie has gone, and how he feels like the life in the house is kind of gone, and his parents don't pay attention to him. He's just kind of living there alongside them as they all are grieving the loss of, you know, Georgie. And then you go into a chapter which is Tales of the Summer of 80 or 58. And these are the stories of the missing children. And I think that it's kind of neat too that you kind of get a behind the scenes of each kid that has gone missing, and there's also a part of like an actual kid being attacked by the it clown and the it monster. And I thought that was really nice just to see those like stories come to life that, you know, in the movies you just hear these names or these kids going missing and you really don't get no detail behind that. And I thought that was really nice to get those details of what happened to those kids, and, you know, maybe how the monster influenced to take them. And then also in this chapter you do get like a backstory on Mike, his family, and his life. And I loved the details of him and his mom and dad and just their farming life and him helping his parents. It was very insightful and I loved it. And you then learn, you know, about Mike's connection with Henry's family and how they don't necessarily get along. And you kind of get like the sense of Henry's father and why Henry might be the way he is, because his father is so hateful. But their farms are right next to each other, so, you know, they interact with each other a lot. And you learn more of why Henry hates Mike and his family. And a big part of, I think, of it is because he is black. And I think they're one of the few black families in Derry at that time, and his family, like Henry's family, is just racist and they don't like them for that fact. And I just think that was kind of like a neat detail to put in there, just kind of making it aware of what life was like for people back then and how they were treated differently still. And even so, Mike and his family never let people like bully them or, you know, knock them down. They were strong individual people who did what they wanted to do, made a livelihood, and I really loved that. And then, of course, you have Mike's encounter with it, which he goes to an old ironwork place, is looking for stuff to bring home to his dad so they can have stories and talk, and he runs into a big bird, a very big bird that attempts to kill him. And that is the first connection to the it monster, is because he's scared of birds, and that's how it comes for him, is to try to scare him again. Of course he gets away, but it was really neat to see like that was his, you know, connection to the monster. The clown never comes and shows himself. It's just the figure of the bird, and then the bird goes away. But it was really cool to say, like, that's how it was represented for him, because that's what he would be most scared of. And then after you follow Mike's life, you go into Eddie's life. So, you know, it is the backstory of him and his wife, and, you know, how his wife is very similar to his mother. And then you kind of go into his home life with his mom and the type of relationship that they have. If you've seen the movies, you know that his mom is very overprotective and like very loving towards him. And, you know, you really in the book get more details of kind of how she's just kind of controlling him, because I think she's just so scared to lose him, and she just wants to make sure she can protect him as much as she can. But you can also tell that she's kind of just smothering, and she needs to give him space just to be a kid and be himself. And I think that was very neat. And of course, just like the movies, his first encounter is with with the it monster is the leaper at the house. So I kind of liked that they kept that as a storyline because it's creepy, you know, in the book, and it's creepy in the movie. So that is really, really cool. And then you go into the kids hanging out, and they're all starting to tell their stories of their encounters with the clown. And they're all kind of just saying, don't laugh at me, don't think I'm crazy, but this happened to me and it was crazy. And then they all start to realize that something is happening to all of them as kids, and this is their first like meeting, kind of saying, okay, what do we need to do, because I think this is a monster that is killing the children that have gone missing, and if we let it, it's going to, you know, kill us too. And then it goes into Richie, who has had an encounter with the clown in his own way, but he thinks that it didn't happen, so he kind of doesn't share with the others of what happened to him. He's just kind of like, no, I haven't seen anything. But at this point, you don't learn yet what happens until later on in the chapters, which I kind of thought was kind of cool, as they kind of keep it mysterious. And then he goes back, you know, is hanging out with Bill. Bill and him go into his brother's room. They are looking through Georgie's picture album, and the picture album starts to come to life. In this part, Bill sticks his hand in the picture and it gets all cut up, and then they throw it across the room. And it's just a scary moment, and I think that's the first time after, you know, the first thing that you don't know yet about Richie happens to Richie, where he's like, oh my gosh, like this is actually real and this is actually happening. And then in the movies too, I noticed that when they go to the movie together, it's all of them. I think everybody except Mike goes to the movie together. Then they have the run in with Henry. And in the book, it's actually Richie wants to go to the movies, but he calls everybody and everybody's busy. He calls Ben. Ben says he can go and he can pay for both of them. He runs into Beverly. Beverly shows him how to play with his yo-yo, and they're kind of bonding. And there's a moment where you see Richie kind of falling for Beverly as well. And then they meet up with Ben. They sit at the movie theaters. The popcorn and the drink get knocked over onto Henry. They have a run-in with Henry. Henry's beating them up. Of course, they get away. And it's just kind of also a cute little moment of just the three of them kind of bonding, and, you know, Richie and Ben kind of falling for Bev even more. And then you go to the next chapter where, you know, after Eddie tells them about the leaper at the old house, Bill wants to go check it out, so Richie goes with them, and he actually brings a gun, and they go into the house. They, you know, get chased by a werewolf. Bill uses the gun, and they get on his bike and run away. And the last instance of Richie turning around to look, he sees the clown, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he sees the clown. But I thought that was kind of, you know, something I realized they probably didn't want to put in the movie as a child with a gun. It is Bill's dad's gun, and I just thought that was also kind of like a neat little detail of, you know, Bill and Richie going to the house first, and later on in the book they do go back to the house with everybody else. But I thought that was a real interesting type of concept, is like they went first, encountered the monster, and then later on they take everybody else back with them to kind of go back over it and maybe see if they can't find if that's like the monster's lair or where it's coming from. So then the last person you kind of learn about is Beverly. You know, in the beginning of the book, you find out a relationship she has with as an adult with her friend Kay. And then later on, you find out Kay's encounter with Tom, which is Bev's wife. Because he's trying to find Beverly in the book, he goes over to Kay, asks where she is. Kay doesn't want to tell him. He literally tries to beat her to death to get the answer out. Kay tells him. He leaves because he's going to Derry to find Beverly to basically kill her because she beat the crap out of him before he left. He got mad. He's going for revenge. And I thought that was kind of a neat detail too, because in the movies she just leaves and that's the end of that story. But I like that they, gave him a type of backstory. Of course, Kay tries to figure out where Beverly is. The hotel calls, leaves a message, and tries to warn her that Tom is coming. But unfortunately, Beverly never gets that message. But that's okay because, going on in the book, you learn more about what Tom's actions are leading up to the final, conclusion of the book. So, of course, the detail in the book that I love they left in the movie is Bev hearing the children in the drain. I think that was really neat that they kept that in. And in the movie, it's creepy. In the book, it's creepy. I also love how Bev's mom is alive in the book. In the movies, she is already dead. But there is this relationship you get to see between her and her mother that I thought was really cool. And I absolutely loved that, they had that relationship. And of course, her parents don't see the blood. And Beverly sees the blood. So she meets up with Ben, Stan, and Eddie. And she tells them about the bathroom. And they come over, they see it, they help her clean it up. And then they kind of go to a laundromat and they talk about, I think Stan opens up about his encounter with the it monster in a, the old standpipe observatory. In the movie, he goes into a house and he, encounters the clown, but in the book, it's kind of like the same as like in the movie. He goes in, the monster comes down the stairs, he starts shouting bird names at the monster and gets away. But in the movie, he does, meet up with Bill, who rides him on his bike away. But in the book, he just kind of gets away, goes home, and then is frightened from that. And in that instance, when he's sitting with those three, he's kind of saying, like, I don't want to believe it happened, but it happened to me, and it scared him. And in the movie, I am pretty sure everybody in the group, besides Mike at that time, who still wasn't friends with them, helped her clean up the bathroom. So, I mean, it's those kind of little details that you just like, they kind of just rushed it and put it in together. But I kind of liked that it was only a few of them and they were able to connect, on, again, a different level and become stronger as friends. And then Stan opening up to them about his encounter was something that he didn't want to tell everybody, but he felt comfortable after seeing, the blood in Bev's bathroom to tell them what happened and what he went through. And then the next few chapters are more stories of missing children from Mike's point of view, and then the stories he's getting from the older people that have grown up over the years that have encountered the clown or that have seen him and don't know who he is or why he was there, but he was there and they remember it. And I think that is a neat detail as well that kind of goes back into Mike researching on what's been going on or how long he's been there. And I definitely think that is a cool concept to put those stories in so you can learn, actually how long the clown has been there, and it has been, taking people or witnessing things and deaths, and how much like he's been a part of Derry for, the last hundreds and hundreds of years. And I definitely think that's kind of neat to get those little details to kind of just also have a backstory on the monster and it, and to know, more about it than you would get in the movies. I don't think they really, cover that. And I definitely think that is a neat detail in the book that they cover. And again, you just get a lot of information about the clown that you wouldn't get if you were just watching the movies. So of course, now after hearing all these stories, you go into them meeting up at the Chinese restaurant, them, talking about how their lives have been, catching up with each other. And of course, in the movies, just like the book, they keep the details of that. And they also keep the details of the fortune cookies coming to life, that was pretty cool to read about as well. And, you know, you kind of get details also too more of like why these certain things came out of the fortune cookies. Kind of like, I think it was for Richie, he had an eyeball, and that's because he was terrified of the eye. It was like an older movie of a big eyeball that was like attacking people, and I thought that was pretty cool. And then afterwards, Mike encourages them to kind of go out separately and walk around Derry and see where it kind of leads them to slowly start to remember what their childhood was like and the things that they can't remember from Derry. And, you know, Bill just wants him to tell them everything that happened because, of course, since Mike did not leave, he remembers everything. But he's like, no, I can't tell you. You need to go figure it out yourself. And he's like, if I tell you, it's going to overwhelm you guys, and I don't want that to happen. So, of course, they're like, okay, fine. Let's go out and walk Derry. So, you know, Ben goes to the library because that's where he spent a lot of his, you know, childhood because he loved the library, and he runs into the clown there. And, of course, it's a scary moment for him to see that it is back and it is coming for them. And then Eddie gets chased by a clown, and in the movies, I think when he goes back, he gets chased by the clown in the little grocery store where he gets his medicine. But in the book, it's like an old baseball field where he used to go and watch kids play baseball. And of course, he couldn't play because his mom didn't want him to get hurt. So he spent a lot of his time just watching them. And that's where he encounters the clown. And it terrifies him and chases him, and he gets away. And then you go into Beverly going home, which I kind of liked that they kept that detail in the movie as well. As she goes home, she meets with the old lady. The old lady turns into a monster, and it's the clown. And then when she goes out of the house, she turns around and sees that it's an abandoned lot and nobody lives there. And I thought that was very neat that they kept that. Reading that part was very scary because I knew what the movie was like, and it was just like the little details and stuff that started to happen too was kind of creepy. And in the book, the old lady turns into her father and is chasing her, and then she kind of falls out, you know, onto the pavement, turns around and realizes that it was all fake and none of it was real. And I thought that was pretty cool. And then you get Richie's, you know, memory of the lumberjack as a kid. So now you finally find out how he had his first introduction to the clown, and it was the lumberjack that's in their plaza comes to life and tries to kill him. And I think I don't remember in the movies if it would happen to him as a kid, but I know it did happen to him as an adult. They put that detail in here, and I loved that. I loved reading it, and it was kind of one of those things where like it didn't happen to him again, but it just made him remember that memory as a kid and kind of just brought that to life to say that was something that really happened. It was not in your imagination, and as much as you didn't think at the time that it happened, that you fell asleep and just had a dream, it was actually something that happened to you. And it kind of just brings it forth to say that was his first encounter with the it monster. And then you kind of go to Bill, who is kind of just walking around, and he really doesn't have an interaction with the clown. He just kind of is, you know, walking past the old neighborhoods, walking past his house, just kind of walking through Derry, and he runs into the kid on the skateboard. And, you know, he's talking to him, asking him details of like the missing kids and just being careful, and if he's seen anything that's weird. And the kid kind of tells him about, I think, seeing the clown, and Bill just tells him to be careful and to watch out for himself. And in the movie, they kind of take that a step further as the clown goes after the kid and kills the kid with a skateboard, but in the book it never takes it that far. The kid is fine in the end. But Bill just kind of walks away from him. Before he walks away, the kid does say, do you want to, get on the skateboard? And Bill attempts, like, I'm going to do it. But then he's like, no, I'm old. I shouldn't do that. And then he kind of just walks away. And then, of course, just like in the movie, he finds Silver. And he buys the bike back. And that kind of jolts memories again of his childhood and all the times he rode Silver and wrote his friends on it, and hi ho Silver. He remembers all of that coming back to him. And then he goes back to Mike's place, asks Mike about fixing it up. Of course, Mike has bought these tools to help him fix it that he's like, I don't know why I bought it, but I did. And they start to work on the bike together, and then he goes and gets the playing cards, and just like in the movie, the cards fly out and it's the face of a clown on one of the cards. And I absolutely love that they did do that in the movie, and they also did it in the book. It was very, again, neat little details that you're like, this is so cool. And then it goes into Henry's life in the insane asylum, hearing the voices from the clown in the moon and all that. It goes into a little bit of detail of what his like day-to-day life is. And then, of course, just like in the movie, his old friend Belcher comes back, gives him the knife, and the clown helps him get out of the insane asylum so he can go finish the work for him on killing the losers. So I also like that they tell you backstories of how Tom is getting to Derry, but they also tell you the backstory of Bill's wife, Audrey, leaving to come to Derry as well. Her decision to do that, her decision to be with Bill, and the feelings around her wanting to go over the feelings of why Tom is going. I definitely thought that was neat. And then, of course, you get more stories of the past, and there's an actual story in there of Mike's dad telling him about this bar that was just made at the time for black people because they wouldn't let them in the other bars. And then everybody started wanting to come because it was cool. And then some of the people in town got mad, wanted to burn it down. And he actually confesses to Mike of seeing the big bird that Mike actually saw as a kid as well. And that was surprising to Mike that his dad had seen what he had seen, but it kind of just confirms again that even as a young adult that his father was, the it monster was still there and was there during the tragic parts of things. Like he was around to witness all these people die, and probably got some type of power or energy from that spot. And that was kind of cool also to see. And then you have a whole chapter of Mike being chased by Henry and his friends, and then he finally runs into the loser club. And in the movie it's a rock fight, but in the book it was way more intense. He was throwing bottle rockets at them, and then one comes back and hits Henry, but the rock fight is still the same. They, get Henry and his friends to go away. And then, of course, in Bill's mind and everybody's mind, the loser club is now complete with Mike finally being there. And then you go into them as adults again, meeting back up at the library where Mike works at, and they start to tell stories of their childhood. Each single person has some type of memory that comes back to them. And you get details of them building the underground clubhouse, which I absolutely loved because the movie kind of skimmed over that and didn't really talk about it. But you get them becoming more connected as friends as they build this place together and this hangout place that they love spending time together, and the times they played and done things together. And I definitely thought that let you see the bond that they had come together even stronger. And, I think during this time they, still go into details of their encounters with the clown and, how they feel about all of it and how it's happening again. And during their kind of flashbacks, Mike brings an album that his dad has collected of photos over the years, and as they go through the album, they see that the clown is in the album in like almost every single picture, is going back and back and back and years and years and years. And just like the movie, the original, the picture comes to life and the clown comes at them and says, "I'm going to kill you all," and then they close it and they're terrified. In the newer movie, he actually comes more in, they're doing like a slideshow, and that's when he comes. So I think it's the same thing but more a little bit updated for the times. And during this chapter too, you find out about the smoke hole, which is they're in the clubhouse and they fill it up with smoke as a Indian ritual. And Richie and Mike actually have the vision of the clown first coming to Earth and what it was like. And in the movie, that actually happens between Mike and Bill. In the movie, he like sprays something in Bill's face and Bill has like this vision of everything that's very intense. But I kind of thought that was different in the book, that it was Richie and Mike and there was like the smoke hole, and then when their friends hear them coughing, pull them out, and they have to describe this to their friends, and it's very hard to describe like what they saw, but they're trying to do their best. And then you kind of go into Eddie talking about his arm being broken by Henry and his friends, and it kind of goes into detail of how that actually happens. And it also goes into the detail of the clerk who gives him his spray, his aspirator for his asthma, and he's the one that tells him that he's really not sick and that his mom is just telling him he's sick. And if he continues to think that he's sick, then that's fine, but really it's just all in his head. And in the movie, it's actually the girl at the front counter that's like, "You're not sick, that's a placebo," and all that. And in the movie, he's at home when he confronts his mother about it, but in the book, he's actually in the hospital recovering from his surgery, confronts his mom about it, and his mom's just like terrified because she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna lose him," and everything. And he's basically just telling her like, "Don't lie to me again and be upfront with me." But he obviously still takes it with him and still thinks he has asthma. I think it's just like a way for him to say, okay, it is what it is, and I believe my mother and I love her. And then Bev shares a story of one of the kids that actually died, and she saw it happen. In this chapter, Henry and his friends are playing with a lighter and they're farting, and their farts are becoming flames. And she kind of like, is there. And then two of the friends leave, and Henry is there with the kid that actually gets taken away, and a sexual act is done. I'm not going to say like what it was, but that was something I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? And then Henry obviously gets pissed at him, tells him he can't tell anybody about it. And Henry leaves. You learn this backstory of this kid, how he's kind of like a murderer of animals, and he puts them in this fridge, and then he goes to open the fridge that is in this garbage place, and he gets attacked by the clown. The clown takes him. Beverly sees it. And that is her story, remembering as a child another part of something she's forgotten. And then you kind of go into the story of all of them going back to the old house and kind of feeling weird about it. They, interact with the clown, but the clown is a werewolf. And this is the first time that you hear the backstory of how they made the silver coins and how they used them at the house for the first time. And they get away before, they get killed, but also the clown gets killed as well. And then, of course, again, you kind of go into a backstory of the clown being seen again. There's this bar fight. They, get mad at this guy because he goes in and he kills a bunch of people, and then they decide to hang him in the square that's the only hanging in Derry, and the clown is there while the hanging is happening. So again, this is another backstory of just the clown being there. And then you go into, after them telling other stories, they decide they're going to go, sleep it off. They'll see each other in the morning. Beverly has a flashback of being chased by her father. Then she runs into Henry, who tries to kill her. She gets away, she meets up with Ben, and then you get a little bit more of a look into the underground clubhouse as they are hiding from Henry and his friends. And then you go into Henry going to the library. He fights Mike, is trying to kill Mike, and Mike gets hurt really badly. And then after that fight with Mike, and Mike kind of beats up Henry as well and hurts him. Henry leaves him because he thinks he's dead. Mike calls for an ambulance. The ambulance comes and gets him, takes him to the hospital, but Henry's like, I'm now going to go after the other kids because that's why I'm here. And then you get a chapter that is about Tom and Audrey's. They intercount the clown and kind of their first encounter with it, and then you kind of get the backstory of the clown using Tom to get to Audrey, to take Audrey to the clown's lair, and kind of the backstory of how she got there, and then eventually Bill's gonna see that she's there and is gonna want to save her. So the last 2 chapters in the book are going back and forth between them as children and them as adults going to the it lair. I kind of like them having the little memories of them going as kids and how they fought it the first time, and then kind of how they went into fighting it the second time as adults. And of course them as children, they fight it, it gets away, they think it's dead, and then they say if it's not dead, we'll come back. And then a little detail that I just thought was like crazy to me is that Bev remembers, sleeping with all of the boys to make a connection of them being friends again. I thought that was just kind of like weird, and I get again why you wouldn't put that in a movie because you're not going to have children sleeping together, but I guess that's what it was. It was just shocking for me. And during these chapters too, you're kind of finding out what's happening to the town. The town's being flooded. The roads are breaking apart. The downtown dairy is caving in on itself. And that's kind of what's happening during them as adults when they're finally fighting the it monster and end up, killing it and making sure it's no longer alive. But in the movies, they don't really go into that detail. It's more or less, just them in the tunnels and nothing about the town. But I thought it was kind of neat that they kind of show you like what's happening in the town is like a reaction to what they're doing and how they're fighting the monster underneath in the caves. And before they go down, Bill finds out that his wife is there and wants to save her. And then you find out also that in the end Eddie dies because he gets his arm ripped off, and they have to leave him down there because they can't take him back with them. So of course in the movie and in the book you find out that Eddie is the only one of the losers that actually dies. Mike survives in the hospital, and they also Bev doesn't see that Tom is there, so she really doesn't know that he came to try to get her because she never got the message from her friend. But he is the reason that Bill's wife is down here, because the clown uses Tom to bring Audrey down there. So then it's kind of luring Bill into actually coming down there to save his wife. So in the end, the clown dies and everything is completely over. And then everybody starts to leave town besides Bill and his wife, because his wife, is kind of just like in a trance from what happened with her encounter with the clown. It, kind of like in the movie, Ben and Beverly leave together. Beverly, I think eventually they say puts out like a missing persons for her husband because again, she didn't know that he was in Derry, didn't know that he was down in the lair. And of course, when her, Ben, and Richie leave, they, start to forget what happened, and they kind of forget their friends and their childhood and the monster. The only ones that remember are Mike and Bill, but their memories also start to kind of fade now that they killed the monster and it is gone. And that was kind of a detail too, is like they're trying to remember, but they know that because it is over and it is really over, those memories are just going to slip them. And even if you stay in Derry, you're not going to remember years from now. It's just going to be something that you think is a story. And of course, Mike, has that journal that he's been writing all this down. So he said, one day all he's going to have is this journal of stories, and he can say that he believes that even over time the journal may fade and the stories may fade, and it'll just become, a lost memory to all of them, that it is just something that happened that they can't remember. And he says maybe not, maybe the journal will stay the same, but you never know. And then the book ends just like the movies do, is that Bill gets on Silver, puts his wife on Silver, they take a ride, and she comes back to life. And she doesn't know what happened, she doesn't know where they are, but it just kind of activates her body, and she's able to come out of the trance. And then the end of the book is Bill talking about, how when he goes to sleep, he dreams of his friends and the things that happen, but to him, they are just dreams. They are not things that actually happen to him and his friends, because, again, as they grow up and as days go by and years go by, they just forget about their childhood and their friendship and fighting the monster, and again, going back as adults and finishing off, they just don't remember that. And the things that Bill does remember are in his dreams, and to him, they are just dreams. And I thought that was really neat to end the book like that, as, as him kind of remembering but not remembering what happened, and just everything coming to an end. And I just have to say that I loved it. I loved every chapter. I loved every detail. And I do encourage you that if you love the movies, read the book, because, again, the details, the stories, even the stories of, the clown being there over the years and people seeing it, and these older people recounting seeing it, but they don't really know what it is or why he was there, but they do remember he was there. It's so crazy. Also, the thing that I loved is by the end of the book, when they're going through the tunnels, you get a point of view of it talking about how it's scared that they're coming, that it's scared that they're going to kill him. And I thought that was kind of cool, because you never get the point of view from the clown, and you definitely get somewhat of a point of view from how he's feeling and what's going through his head, fighting them as children, then fighting them as adults, knowing that they were going to kill him, and how scary that was for him, because he thought he was, had the ultimate power and he was never going to die. And to have these kids come in and say they're going to kill him and actually kill him was scary for him to realize that he is not immortal and he can die. And these kids that now are adults are going to finish him off. And I thought that was a really cool, again, details to put in. I am looking forward to, reading more books and seeing the movies, because I love to read the books first if I can, and then see what the movies are like. I did that with the Twilight series, and of course, again, there's things that you read in a book that you're like, oh, I wish they would have put that in there, or I understand why they didn't put that in there. I did that with the Harry Potter movies. I actually saw the movies first, and then I read the books, and I was like, oh my gosh, the details, in these books that I wish they could have put in the movies. But again, I understand with movies you can only put so many details, but books you can put as many little tiny details as you want, and I think that's what makes the story even better. So 5 out of 5 for me. Absolutely love this book. Absolutely glad I finally decided to read it. And I hope this encourages you to read it. Of course, I kind of gave spoilers, throughout of like how the book's gonna go and what it's gonna look like, but I definitely still think there's a lot of stuff I didn't tell you guys about and didn't talk about that or in the book, like just these stories from Mike talking to people and just the individual stories from them, I think would be interesting for, you to read and to see how, again, the clown has been there for like hundreds and hundreds of years, and how these people have encountered him throughout all these years, and how, it finally comes to an end. And it is no longer something that Derry has to worry about. And I think that is a really cool detail. So thanks for letting me talk to you today about the It book. And again, I hope this encourages you to go get a read. Yes, it is 1,010 pages. It took me about 3 to 4 months to read, mostly because I wasn't like consistently reading it every day. I think if I consistently read it every day, it wouldn't have took me this long. But it, again, is definitely worth reading if you have the time. And I know you're going to enjoy it as much as I did. So thanks for hanging out with me today as I talked about the It book. And I will talk to you guys again real soon in the next video. Bye, guys.